I'm Agent Morris with the NSA.
We have identified some very, very interesting anomalous type of aircraft.
Traffic is quite luminous and is exhibiting some non-ballistic motion. Over.
Moved very rapidly at any speed or whether any direction it wanted to go. Why it could change and go to the right or the left or go crossways without hesitating a bit.
What do you think it was?
Well, if they call it a flying saucer, that's what it is.
EWA 517, do you want to report a UFO? Over. Negative. We don't want to report.
Look, it wasn't my worst Wednesday night.
Good evening. I'm your host, Smiles Lewis, and you are listening to a live edition of Anomaly Now, live from Austin, Texas, on this Wednesday, February 8th, 2023. Thank you for joining me. Our co-host, Mark Jackson, may or may not be joining me at some point this evening, but thank you for tuning in, whether this is live or pre-recorded for you, whether you're watching the YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter stream, or catching the audio-only rebroadcast podcast via Spotify or your favorite podcatcher. Thank you for taking the time. What do they say? Smash the bell, sign up for notifications so that you can always be kept in the loop about our next episodes. And this is a weekly news roundup show for the nonprofit 501c3 Anomaly Archives Scientific Anomaly Institute, located here in Austin, Texas. We were founded in 2003 as a growing repository for the preservation of materials having to do with the seeking of knowledge in the realm of the anomalous, whether that be consciousness, mind, what is it, parapsychology, the paranormal, whether it be ghost hunting, poltergeists, apparitions, all that sort of thing, or of course our favorite topic, the UFO phenomena, now rebranded as UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena, or as I prefer, unidentified anomalous phenomena, sometimes referred to in my vernacular as UFOs, unassimilated fantastic observations. So last week we did have to cancel our weekly show. Sorry for promoting that and then not being there for you. But for those of you who are aware of what was sweeping across the United States, we had a massive Arctic blast that came through central Texas and kept moving eastward and making life a little chilly and problematic. We were without power for not quite 24 hours. And that made life a little bit too complicated to try and pull off a live internet streaming broadcast like this. So we just rescheduled for the next available time slot, which of course is our Wednesdays here. And again, thank you for joining us. So last week we had, of course, a few news items that we might get to a little later. But boy, how strange is it that in 2023, we would be talking about not exactly weather balloons in the case of unidentified mystery objects in the sky, but in this case, alleged surveillance balloons, or was it just a weather balloon as the Chinese were claiming? Yes, we are talking about this supposed China surveillance balloon and 3 bus-sized package hanging from beneath it that was tracked going across the Canadian-American border into the United States, then hovering for a time over obviously sensitive sites in Montana, such as our nuclear facilities, nuclear warhead missile launching facilities, and then moseying its way across the country before finally being shot down just off the coast, the eastern seaboard. Now, for those of you who are old hats at the UFO phenomena, and even those of you who are newbies to it, you undoubtedly have heard the old joke about, governments and military authorities dismissing UFO sightings as being simply misidentifications of everything from swamp gas to weather balloons. And while it is certainly true that 80 to 90+% of all UFO sightings can inevitably be written off as IFOs, identified flying objects, that are often prosaically explained, such as in terms of misidentifications of things such as balloons, weather balloons, or satellites and what have you, or even Venus or the moon in some cases. It is a little weird over the past several years of the rollout of information about the government's UAP, UFO program, OSAP, ATIP, whatever you want to call it, and Lou Elizondo and others' attempts to try and destigmatize the subject of UAPs, move it forward in terms of its accessibility and lifting the ridicule curtain, the laughter factor from people's talking about this, so that we can actually get down to some real research and maybe some actual progress after the 70+ years that the modern UFO era has been going on. But before we go too far into the UFO, this recent week's UFO incident with the China balloon, I did want to promote something that has been announced recently, and that is this Archives of the Impossible 2 Eclectic Boogaloo, as I'm calling it, transnationalism, transdisciplinary, transcendence. That is the subtitle for this second edition of the important Rice University Archives of the Impossible, founded by Jeff Kripal there in Houston, Texas. For those of you who've been following along with this sea change happening in the UFO scene, the Rice University Archives seem to represent the tip of the spear, so to speak, of the sea change happening in academia. This is an important development, and we are excited to see that there is another event already planned. So last March of 2022 was the long awaited for 1 or 2 year delayed grand opening of the Rice University Archives of the Impossible that I and many others participated in. I was honored to be on a panel discussion there talking about archives such as ours here in Austin and those around the country, and now this one here in Texas at Rice University in Houston, being on the cutting edge of trying to preserve this important information. And sure enough, as was mentioned at that event, they had hoped to continue a recurring series of events, and they have now announced that. And you can go to impossiblearchives.rice.edu/conferences, or just impossiblearchives.rice.edu, and it'll take you to the conference if you click the right link. And scrolling down, I think we may, so there's going to be, just like this last year's event, there's going to be pre-conferences with webinars that folks can attend, one happening starting in April 19th, featuring Gustavo Rodriguez Roca. And then a week or so later, Yvonne Chirot, I believe is her name, will be presenting on April 26th. And very exciting, May 3rd, our friend Joshua Cutchin will be presenting. So you can sign up for any of these virtual pre-webinar events before the main event happening in May. Now, and the great thing about this big event, the actual main event, happening, I think it's May 11th through 13th, is it is going to be just like before. You can go in person, or you can sign up and watch remotely, virtually online. This is, of course, the new hybrid model, and I think it's a great way for increasing accessibility. But there's going to be a great bunch of folks lined up to speak at this next conference in this ongoing series, and you can find all the information over at the impossiblearchives.rice.edu. Meanwhile, over at societyforuapstudies.org is this past weekend was an all virtual conference. I believe it was all virtual. I don't think it was hybrid. But there's this new organization that's one of many that's springing up now in the wake of the government UAP UFO research revelations. Society for UAP Studies, advancing the study of unidentified aerospace phenomena through interdisciplinary dialogue. This looks to be a very interesting new organization. They're launching their own journal called Limina, the Journal of UAP Studies. And their founder and editor-in-chief is Michael Christian Sifone from the City University of New York in the Bronx. And excitingly, they're doing their own event coming up. When is it? Oh, yes, I'm sorry. It was just this past weekend. And sadly, I was not able to attend. Still dealing with the fallout from the ice storm last week. I didn't finish commenting on that. We were without power. We took in a friend who was without power for more than a couple of days, and eventually we got our power back. And but that kept recovering from that. The trees were devastated in our neighborhood, and we've just been dealing with that. So I was not able to attend this virtual only event put on by the Society for UAP Studies, but we'll put links to all this in the show notes, and of course we'll be hopefully finding out more about it. And I'm hoping that they put up the videos of participants either for free or pay, whatever. But look at this amazing list of participants. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. And there's old Jeff Kripal from Rice University, as we were just talking about, and so many other people, including Austin's own Robert Powell from the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies that he helped co-found, Mark Rodiger of Center for UFO Studies. It was founded by J. Allen Hynek back in the day. So great lineup, amazing people. Oh, Alexander Wendt, love his UFO sovereignty article from way back. Good stuff. So we'll provide the links. Yeah, you can go check that out. And we're really I think it really does go to show that there is a sea change, as they say, in the study of these amazing things. And really looking forward to see where all this goes. Now, one thing we were going to talk about, of course, the big news this week, as mentioned already, is this idea, this massive balloon surveilling the United States, gaining all this attention. Now, honestly, I think a lot of us are just kind of at a loss for words. It seems highly improbable that the multi-billion, trillion-dollar military war machine that is the United States defense industry would be so seemingly inept as to allow this to happen, let alone play as if they were caught off guard. It seems pretty clear that this was known from very early on, and as with everything, is likely being used as a political football or for political theater. It's also very interesting, of course, to see the politicizing of it, not least of which involves, of course, this Republicans blaming Biden for letting suspected Chinese balloon cross into the U.S. Let's see. I think we've got that here over at businessinsider.com. Not to be outdone, there's reports that another spy balloon may have crashed off Hawaii 4 months ago. Officials say at least one balloon flew over parts of Texas and Florida during the Trump administration, despite former presidents saying it never happened. That's, of course, from Fox News. It's just kind of, it's really strange to me to see this all playing out like this. Really not sure what to make of it. And of course, there's so many hilarious political cartoons and memes that are being generated by this. But one of the things that really interested me was, of course, Canadian UFO researcher Chris Rutkowski, whom we've had on this very show a few years ago, when he was talking about reports in the media and how inaccurate they were in talking about the rates of UFO sightings and that sort of thing. And sure enough, he issued a statement over on the UFO Updates Facebook group, where he and is an admin. And I think this is very telling. He, of course, says the takeaways from the Chinese recon balloon incident are significant for ufology and UAP studies. First, the public became aware of this when people started posting on social media and phoning media outlets about a UAP in the sky on Thursday afternoon, February 2nd. It was first reported by a witness in Harleton, Montana around 1 p.m., then a report from Reed Point around 2 p.m. More and more reported it, and many people reported it over Billings around 4 or 5 p.m. Another report came from Hobson, Montana. Media started getting experts to comment for the supper time news, but by 6 p.m., the Pentagon stated to CNN and other news outlets that they were tracking a Chinese surveillance balloon. So while most people were unaware, the balloon was identified and being monitored by the U.S. Space Force and NORAD. The track from the NOA clearly showed its progress from China across Alaska, then British Columbia, Alberta, and Saskatchewan before it was slowed, and onboard systems allowed it to remain in place over U.S. nuclear sites in Montana. So citizen observations of a UAP, quote unquote, were useful in alerting the public, but also certainly provided the Pentagon with supplemental data on the balloon's movement. Therefore, human and uninstrumented observations of UAP do have value in UAP research. Also, media contacted UFO UAP researchers early on for their opinion and comments on the object seen over Montana before the Pentagon revealed what it was. If defense officials had alerted UAP researchers earlier, they could have reassured the public as well. But this also shows that when an object is seen in the sky, especially by dozens of witnesses, it means there actually was an object in the sky. It was not a mass hallucination. When UAP reports are filed with ufologists, there were, for the most part, objects seen that initially baffled the observers. If a Chinese reconnaissance balloon is flying over the USA to test American defenses, monitor nuclear facilities, and eavesdrop on cell phone conversations, now there's an idea, it is not unreasonable to suggest that smaller Chinese devices or craft could be buzzing around U.S. Navy testing and training facilities off Catalina, of course, referring to the infamous UAP videos, the Navy videos released as part of the To the Stars Academy efforts, Lou Elizondo, Chris Mellon, and all their efforts. Again, I just think Chris, while he is very much a skeptic, that actually makes him well-nigh a good researcher to comment on this sort of stuff. So another article, I'm just thinking about the context of this. I find it significant that here we are, in 2023, talking about this, and balloons, besides the infamous claim that Roswell was first a weather balloon, and then later described as a Project Mogul balloon, which was a high altitude electromagnetically oriented balloon assembly to monitor Soviet nuclear weapons testing. There later in the history of UFO research and ufology and the researchers themselves came several ideas that are often poo-pooed by believers and even skeptics alike. And one of those earliest ideas was put forth by one of my favorite UFO researchers, John Keel. John Keel, of course, was famous for a lot of things. His book, The Mothman Prophecies, and he put forth an idea about the Roswell crash possibly being the result of a Fugo balloon. And the Fugo balloons were a Japanese balloon bomb assembly where the Japanese had these massive balloons that with explosives on the bottom that they would float up via the jet stream over to North America. And this was kept secret from the American public for a long time. There were a few that came down and, in fact, I think injured some people, but it was covered up because they didn't want to cause a scare or give any aid and comfort to the enemy by letting them know that, yes, indeed, they'd been successful. Of course, this was all pre-satellite technology, and so there wouldn't be as many easy ways to track that sort of thing. But Keel was one to put forth this idea. He mixed up the idea in very strange ways by describing the possibility that there was a monkey on board, and that this that there was a monkey on board, and that the descriptions of alien bodies might have been somehow connected to that. And most people just laughed and thought this is the most ridiculous thing ever. First of all, because of the number of years between the end of the war, World War II, with against the Germans and the other Axis powers, and Japan specifically. And so how could this balloon have been kept aloft so long if that's what this was? Or was it sent somehow way after the end of the war? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. But years later, of course, researcher extraordinaire Nick Redfern would come out with a book called Bodysnatchers in the Desert, in which he assembled all the weird data points that he was coming across for years that had to do with this idea that the overall the idea that he puts forth in the book Bodysnatchers in the Desert, which he is very quick to say is not necessarily what he believes to be true, but is what he is reporting in the book as far as the data that has been presented to him via all these different seemingly unrelated sources that all seem to gel into a tapestry that I personally find very compelling as an explanation, as one possible explanation for what happened with Roswell. And that basically is that just like with the German Nazi human experimentation program that was led by Mengele, where all sorts of horrible things were done to human subjects, including the testing of live human subjects in ice cold water or high altitude, using high altitude balloons to see the effects of these stresses on these poor human victims. There was a similar program under an organization called Unit 731, if I'm getting the number right, under the Japanese Axis powers. And it is alleged, and I believe this has all been confirmed, that just like with Project Paperclip, whereby the Nazis, after we won the war, Nazis were imported into the United States and seeded throughout the United States college system and research institutes under the auspice of the CIA and others. And this is what led to such things as CIA and Project MK Ultra, but much other things. I mean, we're talking, I believe, thousands of Nazis were imported and allowed to continue their work. Well, similarly, supposedly, members of Unit 731 were similarly brought over from Japan. But worse still was the alleged bringing over of some of their test subjects. And these test subjects tended to be people with disabilities, people who had been disappeared for various reasons, as people that would not be missed, that sort of thing. And the allegation floated by sources of Nick Redfern's that he published in that book, Bodysnatchers in the Desert, is this idea that these victims were brought over with the researchers, and the research was allowed to continue, and that what was actually downed in Roswell and discovered by local witnesses was in fact the results of one of these combination of German flying wing, Horton Brothers type flying wing technology that was supposedly suspended under one of these balloons, and that they were using these disabled human experiment victims as experimentees, and that what people saw were probably people with things like progeria or other types of disabilities. Now, this is a horrific scenario, and my gosh, can you imagine if it were ever proven? What would Roswell, New Mexico's reaction be now that this is like their main tourism money-making machine? The idea of crashed aliens. Well, what if it was turned out to actually be that was the cover story for something much, much worse? Who knows? Now, years later, or within a few years of Nick Redfern's book, a more prominent mainstream journalist, Annie Jacobson, came out with her massive, really thick book about the history of Area 51. And one of the things that got the most attention was not the pretty well verified history of the mystery airbase, but in fact, one of her sources coming forward with a similar to Redfern's story, Redfern's hypothesis put forth in Bodysnatchers in the Desert, but with the twist that it was those dang Soviets that Stalin had worked with Mengele to create chimera fake aliens, and that they had somehow flown some sort of aircraft into the United States and deliberately crashed it, and this was to create a kind of a War of the Worlds type scenario, a false fake alien invasion, or and induce fear or whatever, cause a panic or what have you. Again, many people have poo-pooed that and focused on that and and disregarded everything else in her book, because of course it is the most sensational idea in the book compared to just, oh wow, that's where they did secret aviation tests. So I found all of this very fascinating. Of course, nowadays the Project Mogul explanation is the skeptical debunking idea for what happened in Roswell. If you do a search for Mogul Roswell, you'll find all the mainstream sources that put forth this idea that yes, that is exactly what happened in Roswell. It was just this Mogul balloon. But the whole point of the testimony of the Roswell witnesses is this idea that they were, Mac Brazel is the person credited with whose land the wreckage was found on and who turned it into the military. Well, he was used to turning in weather balloon material, and I think there was like a standard reward, and this happened on such a regular basis that Brazel would have been very familiar with traditional balloon technology. And so the stories of the strange aspects of the metamaterials or what have you, the wreckage, would be much more unlikely if this was just a weather balloon or even a Project Mogul balloon. It seems highly unlikely that the technology being employed in the Mogul balloon would have been so advanced as to be that different from a weather balloon that Brazel would have already been familiar with. So it doesn't really sit well with me as a probable explanation, but there you go. So there are all these different balloon aspects to this current spat of news this past week involving this alleged Chinese surveillance balloon, and I don't doubt that it could and probably is in fact what the military industrial complex is describing as a surveillance balloon. However, it is the fact is that besides the context of the UFO balloon context that we just went over, let's not forget that we'll post links to these articles from the past several years. Back in 2015, let's see if I can pull this up here. Back in 2015, the Baltimore Sun reported balloon escape is latest problem for troubled Army program. So yes, no surprise there. The military has been using balloons obviously for a long time. We use them regularly for border patrol as surveillance platforms. And then there are these other incidents back in 2019. Here's the Guardian, Pentagon testing mass surveillance balloons across the U.S. So yeah, we were talking about, and I think doing, the exact same thing that perhaps the Chinese are being alleged to have done to us. So let's monitor our own people. Now, this isn't trying to be a political program here, but it just gives you some context to this latest round of government claims of Chinese surveillance of the American people. And then there's some very interesting stuff. Let's see if this is good.
Today, mankind embarks on its most exciting
adventure. I don't
adventure,
know if I've got
the conquest
the
of
audio.
space.
Hold on a second here. Well, let's see here. I'm going to try to share this one more time here. Share screen. I think I've got the audio turned on. Is it working? Oh, here we go.
The conquest of space and the role of the balloon.
I don't think it's playing. I don't think you can hear that sound. Anyway,
Raven
this
Aerostar is a
from
world
2 years
leader in
ago.
the design,
Raven
development,
Aerostar
and
was
manufacture of
a
aerospace
contractor, and this
products.
is one of the balloon
We've been
systems that they
challenging the
were,
limit.
working
Overhead balloon
on
systems
with the
allow for
military.
rapid
And
integration
it's
of
all
diverse
about
payloads and
surveillance. It's all
sensors,
about,
serving a wide
coordinating,
range of missions.
everything, and it's pretty amazing. This is the exact same kind of like controllable from satellites
duration
type of technology for a balloon to make it be able to hover over sites that you want to be that you want observed, just like what we've been seeing in the claims about this Chinese balloon. So again, just another day in the militarily funded high altitude balloon arena. There was another, let's see, here's NOAA research. This is from research.noaa.gov. Teaming up with Arizona firm to advance study of stratosphere. And there's your track for one of these balloons. Anyway, these are, just further examples of the context of what we're talking about. And also this one interesting. We've repeatedly cited the drive.com in our news shows here, and this one from 2021. What we know about the high altitude balloons recently lingering off America's coastlines. And this gets into exactly the same kinds of allegations about balloons and links to some of those same videos that we were just showing as far as the American version of that. Well, we're going to try to keep this short tonight. That is pretty much the extent of what I wanted to talk to you all about with regard to this silly balloon incident. I know it's not near as fun as some of the other news that we often cover here on Anomaly Now, but we, look forward to launching some new interview series real soon, some roundtable panel discussions. We're going to be expanding all kinds of content creation for material on behalf of the 501c3 Anomaly Archives, who host this show. And you can find out so much more about the Anomaly Archives by going to our website, ANOMALY archives.org. And I am Smiles Lewis, and we will see you again next week. Thank you for joining us, and good night.